and roller. Because you're at the top of the list of videos, I can see a beautiful face. If you can just give me a thumbs up that you can see some beautiful water. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So it's working, sound is working, fantastic. Okay, so like I said, this is an introduction and precursor to the Sacred Geometry Foundations Teacher Training Course and Development happening with myself in May. So this will just give you a nice little simple introduction and a bit of a teaser, to be honest, into what we'll be exploring more in depth, which is patterns in nature, the mythological and symbolic, and the architecture and traditional arts around the world. So I'll just introduce myself and tell you a little bit about myself and my journey. And the art of process is based on three particular principles, which one is very important to me, which is drawing by hand. So as much as the computer and technology is a wonderful tool, obviously, because I'm sitting here with you today, and so many of you from around the world, it's a wonderful opportunity to gather together and share. And when it comes to drawing patterns, I'm a huge believer in the power of hand to paper. So that's something that I hold very dear to my heart, because there's so much learning to do through that process, through the hand and heart and mind. And I feel like this beauty of, well, the meditative process can get lost when we draw on the computer. So that's a huge importance to me. And my job is to research what we have in common. So I like to express what I do as the swirling oneness of things. So I am quite nomadic. I have been on the road for 16 years. And I research patterns. So patterns in nature, patterns in architecture across the world. And I really look for beauty in everything. So reverence and really paying attention to all of the beauty that exists in life. I'm just going to exit and admit someone else into the room. So a trilogy of the things we have in common: reverence, observing beauty in every aspect of life, and something that, again, I hold dear to my heart, which is finding the still point, which is exactly what I feel when I am drawing geometry, and also just taking a walk in nature as well. Now, I would like to pay my respects to this person here, which some of you are probably familiar with, is Carl Gustav Jung. He was a psychologist, psychoanalyst, and he used mandalas as a tool to get into the psyche of his patients. And I have read numerous books Carl Jung has written, and it's been a big inspiration for me. So a little bit of a backstory on myself. My interest in sacred geometry really started from a young child, but unknowingly. So I mean, my mum makes a joke that I kind of came out with a pencil in my hand. I knew that that's something that I loved. I couldn't help but sit in front of nature and copy what I saw, and drew patterns in nature, but more freehand. And I was brought up surrounded by, so my environment around me was quite chaotic. I was brought up surrounded by a lot of mental illness. A lot of schizophrenia runs in my family, and a lot of manic bipolar and depression, and even suicide. So I grew up in a very, let's say, chaotic environment where I didn't know, I guess you would say there was not much stability in or grounding in emotions. So I experienced huge bouts of love and the complete opposite to that within a second. And that was quite confusing for me as a child. So what I used to do was lock myself in my bedroom, and I used to draw mandalas. Unknowingly, I would say I was trying to self-heal through patterns. And for some reason, drawing in these circular movements brought me so much comfort and a stillness and a feeling of wholeness, a safety. And that, I would say, was my grounding throughout my childhood. And I've carried that on into my adult life. And now I share it with the world because I feel that anyone can pick up a compass and ruler. It's quite an easy process to follow some steps. And to play like a child again is something so important to me. And so much healing can be done through that process. So what I actually used to do was draw a mandala on one side of the page, and as I was drawing, I would purge. So I would call it a purge, and I would write all of my feelings on the back of my artwork. So anything that came to mind, I would just purge onto the piece of paper. And after that, mandala I felt was complete. I never kind of saw it again. Every day or every week, I would start a new one afresh because I felt different and I was trying to understand those feelings in the moment. So when I started reading Carl Jung's work, his words really resonated with me. And I've added a couple to this slide. I feel like every single slide is a little portal in itself. So that's one of Carl Jung's beautiful mandalas from his wonderful, wonderful books called The Red Book, one of his greatest works. And I just really resonate with what he has to say. I knew that in finding the mandala as an expression of the self, I had attained what was for me the ultimate. At the bottom there, I sketched every morning in a notebook a small circular drawing, a mandala, which seemed to correspond to my inner situation at the time. Only gradually did I discover what the mandala really is, the self, the wholeness of the personality, which, if all goes well, is harmonious. So through his words and his work, I felt so much comfort and a sense of family and belonging. And now I teach sacred geometry. So you're all family, and it's a beautiful community that just keeps growing and growing. So thank you for joining me. Now, talking about chaos, when we look at the world, it can look quite chaotic or even random. And some of you may know what this image is, and it is an image of mycelium. So mycelium is probably one of our largest organisms on the planet. It lives in the soil everywhere you walk. This beautiful structure is connected underneath us. And some people call it the wood wild web. This mycelium or fungi is growing in a fractal manner. And it is absolutely stunning. And there is a pattern to the mycelium network, which looks quite similar to our central nervous system. So if you didn't know what we looked like, underneath this beautiful skin, we look quite interesting, I would say, quite spectacular. So my job is to look for order within the chaos. So the fundamentals of nature, the foundations. So my job has been to research the circle, the spiral, the square, the triangle that seems to pop up time and time again around the world. So obviously, what am I? What are you? We are a five-pointed star. We are a pentagon. This is the Vitruvian Man exploring the human proportions. So inside, we look quite chaotic. There's a lot of complexity happening. On the outside, we look a little bit more simple. So going back to Carl Jung, he mentioned in one of his lectures that there is no linear evolution. there is only a circumambulation of the self. Now, this circumambulation derives from the Latin circum, which means around, and ambulatus, to walk. So to walk around. And if you look closely at humans, our nature, and rituals around the world, we all do it. So this is symbolic of the divine presence. So we have the whirling dervishes there, top left-hand corner, spinning around. We've got the monks on a pilgrim walking around a sacred site. In India, we have Pradakshina, which if you walk around a sacred site, this dispels sins, grants boons, destroys karma, and bestows salvation. So the planets also move in these manners. The planets circle the sun. Electrons circulate the nucleus in an atom, and as our blood circles in the human body. Plants also evolve in this manner towards the sunlight. We have phyllotaxy or phyllotaxis, phyllotaxic movements, leaves moving around a plant stem, spiral towards the sun. Planetary movements, this is called the dance of Venus, kissing us every 8 years and creating this beautiful pentagonal pattern, emanating the same proportions as the human body. Now, as I was contemplating about this circumambulation, so this circular movement that everyone seems to be doing, everything on the planet seems to be rotating around in this circular motion, it really brought me back to Australia, as I am in Australia, and the Aboriginal rite of passage, which we call walkabout, so to go for a walk. And this is an act to honor their ancestors that trace back paths or song lines to survive. And this has been going on for 50,000 years. And this rite of passage represents a coming of age. So the whole point of going walkabout, which usually happens at 13 years of age, a boy will be sent out into the world alone to go walkabout. And this develops their survival skills. And it's a time for reflection. So the finding of what is I am and becoming one with nature. So they don't have to follow an exact route, but they follow the song lines that their ancestors made. And the song lines and marks on the sky and on the land. So this I am and becoming one with nature, I feel is the essence of the art of process. So it's this pilgrim or journey to the center of the self, which I really try to live my life by. So not only am I drawing geometry constantly in patterns and finding the still point within that journey and the process, I'm not so worried about the outcome and what the drawing looks like. All of the juice happens within the process. And I really try to live my life in that way as much as possible. So I am quite nomadic. I don't have one home. I move around constantly. And there's so much learning and evolution to happen through that process. Now I'd like you to sit back and relax. I am going to show you a video, which is absolutely breathtaking. And I'm sure some of you have seen it before. And if you can turn your sound up and enjoy. So if you were contemplating what this pufferfish was trying to do, so this is a male pufferfish, and he is creating a nest. And this particular nest is in the form of, as you can see, let's have a look. Where's that beautiful bird's eye view? So it's obviously circular. Now, this particular structure and the channels that the pufferfish has created has essentially created a still point in the center for the female to come and lay her eggs safely. You can imagine, I'm sure all of you have been in the ocean. The ocean is quite turbulent, you know, it's constantly ebbing and flowing, it's moving. And the pufferfish eggs are not going to be so big, and they can easily get swept away through the tides. So it's not 100% still, but it is a percentage less than the actual, it's a 22-fold division. Yeah, it's quite spectacular. And it's just this, you know, another beautiful mystery and phenomena to these patterns that keep surfacing. So I really believe that everything maths, we've developed a language that is called mathematics, but it already exists. Obviously, even the pufferfish maths. And it makes me think, did the pufferfish go to pufferfish school to learn this knowledge? But it isn't innate. It lives within us. It lives within everything. We all math. We all have this knowledge. And coming back to why I do what I do, why I love what I do, is I remember sitting in math class in school, completely bored. I actually didn't really enjoy math at all. I thought the way it was taught for me personally wasn't quite inspiring. I don't see the world in, well, it's a tricky thing. I was about to say, I don't see the world in numbers, but we do. It's this kind of, it's just happening around us. And we have this resonance to these patterns, obviously, because they live within us. I feel like we're all born mathematicians because we are math. So I really do believe that math needs to be taught differently in school, and that the math and the science and the art and the physics and the philosophy should never be separate. It's a wholeness, it's a whole. And to be able to teach holistically is a big thing that I hold dear to my heart. How do they know what they need to do? I was just reading Jana's comment. Well, that's the mysticism, that's the beauty, you know. That's what's so wonderful. Okay, let's move on. To the next slide. So what is sacred geometry? Because that's the subject we're studying. So let's look at the root words. So break down the language, etymology. I find the English language particularly to be quite cumbersome. So the sacred geometry, it's the fundamental relationship between the earth and ourselves. When we look at the word sacred, over the years, I've noticed that people tend to, I mean, obviously people gravitate towards this subject. That's why you're here learning right now. And a lot of people run away from the word sacred because straight away they just go religion. And when you look at the root word of sacred, what does it mean to be sacred? It means to be devoted to or dedicated to, reverence, which means respect, or to be holy. So it literally translates to deserving respect. And I truly believe that everything deserves respect. Everything is sacred. Even all of the insects and the mosquitoes that bite me in the night, you know, it drives me up the wall, but, you know, it's so crucial to the circle of life. And that little mosquito is so sacred. And let's look at the word geometry. So geometry, Greek word for geos, the world, the earth, metra, so geometry, earth measure. If you look at the word metra, or to measure, at the bottom there I've put meter is also the word for mother, matter, and material, which makes sense when we call the earth, you know, Mother Earth. So figuring it out is the measuring of the world. We have done that since the dawn of time. We've measured things. Now, I love, not that I can speak it, but looking into the Sanskrit language, and there's no actual word to translate. So the word meter is actually derived from an expression called Maya, which means illusion or imagination. Now, talking about measuring, so at the bottom there, so bottom right-hand corner, we've got this Egyptian tool called the royal cubit. So obviously there are so many ways to measure things these days, and we have evolved and progressed, and we love perfection. Humans love perfection. We love perfecting everything and making things complex, and that's the ego coming in my belief. But I like to break things down and go back to the simple things and simplicity. So we can actually measure anything with our body. And I really think this is why when you look around the world at sacred spaces and how they are connected to the proportions in our body is because we used to measure within our body. So for example, if you look at the image there, we've got the cubit, which is derived from our hand to our elbow. We have the span of the hand. We can obviously measure in our foot. We can measure in our steps as well. We've got the palm and the 4 digits. So we can measure in our body very simply, very easily. So going back to the oneness of things. So we are symptoms of the state of the universe as a whole. Now, because this subject is so vast and it is quite complex, I'm still learning myself. There's always something more to learn. And I've found, like, through the knowledge, you can kind of get lost in the knowledge, lost in the books. And what I've tried to focus on is what we all have in common, and which is symbols. And we see the world through patterns. And there are only a certain through archetypal forms that pop up time and time again, which is the circle, the triangle, and the square. Sorry for leaving and coming back in again. I'm just admitting people into the room. Now, when we break everything down to the simplicity, so going back to simplicity, which I think is so important, especially in this day and age, going back to the simple, beautiful elements of life. We're looking at the circle, the triangle, and the square. Now, these are foundations, and I'll talk about them more in depth through the full course. Again, I feel like this is a little bit of a teaser. I'm touching on so much. But what I would like to do now is move on to sound. So I really believe that sound is a huge and fundamental element of form. So this is called cymatics. If you haven't heard of that word before, please write it down, cymatics, cymatics, which is the acoustic effects of sound wave phenomena. This is called the Chladni plate, which was found by a guy called Hans Jenny, German, pronounced Chladni. And it's a basic, simple structure of a metal plate. In this case, it is a square. So we have a square. Instead of connecting a particular technological device to up the amp, so to say, you can take just a bow, a violin bow, and you can move that on the side of the edge of the square, and the vibration that hits the metal plate will move all the particles that are sitting on top. So you can use a fine particle like sand or salt spread on top of the plate. And what's so fantastic and wonderful is the particles start to gather. So nothing ever wants to be in isolation. When that sound hits the plate, a form will happen. And what I found very interesting is if you look at the diagrams from 345 hertz to 5,907 hertz, you can see the complexity changes. So the smaller or the less the vibration, the more simple the pattern is. The more complex, the more high vibes, the more complex the pattern becomes. Now, talking about the foundations and bringing everything back to that foundation, the grounding surface. This plate is a square. So these patterns will only ever make fourfold patterns. So these patterns consist of 4s, 8s, 16s, 24s, 48s, for example. If you were to change the foundation to, let's say, a triangle, you have 3 nodes to play with. If you were to change it to a hexagon, you have 6 vertices, 6 nodes. So the patterns will be different, but they'll be based on the number 6, same as an octagon, 8s. If it was a circle, you will have infinite possibilities. So I find that very, very fascinating, going back to the foundations. The foundation matters. Excuse the pun. So I don't know if you already know, but this is our skin. Our skin is made up of tiny little triangles. Everything in life is made up of triangles. Remember that beautiful word called trigonometry? Not that I found that fun in school, but it is absolutely fascinating. We are made up of triangles. Triangles make up all polygons. And what I'd like to mention is everything in life, everything in nature is imperfect. We as humans have developed this language called math, and we look for perfection. So we have developed this language which tells us a perfect representation. It communicates a perfect representation of life that is not perfect. Everything is imperfect and irregular. Everything is an approximation, but there are foundations. So I'd like to show you another video. I love this. I don't know if you've heard of a bubbleologist before. So what we're focusing on is obviously the circle, the triangle, the square, and more shapes can be made out of those fundamental forms. So sit back, enjoy. If you have not watched The Code, so this is a little clip from a series on BBC that was 12 years ago. It was called The Code. It's quite fascinating. And I'm going to show you my favorite clip.
Make the lowest energy is the dodecahedron. Yeah.
How cool is that? And that's exactly what we'll be drawing today, a dodecahedron. Let me know in the chat if you loved that presentation, that video. I will send you the link so you can watch that again at home. It's quite fascinating. Okay, so let me please take you for a trip around the world. So obviously humans around the world, we have been inspired by nature, our greatest architect of all, and it is efficient. It will always find a way, always find a way to self-harmonize. It will always find a way. So going back to simplicity, we have some beautiful images here. So top left-hand corner, we have traditional tattoo art in New Zealand. So this is Maori or Maori, pronounced Maori artwork. And this symbol of the spiral represents the unfurling life, renewal. And it's a symbol and representation of the fiddle-tip fern. I'm sure you've all seen a fern unfurl. So this symbol of renewal and replenish and purity. In the middle there, so I'm just working towards the right-hand side at the top. Some of you have taken this class with me before, and you know me, and you know how fascinated I am with Indonesia. I've been living in Bali on and off for 16 years. And this is Sulawesi, called the Toraja tribe. Their belief system is based on animism in that everything in life has spirit, not just humans. Every plant, every seed, everything has wood, has spirit, and their whole way of life and philosophy is carved and painted into their homes. And they are all simple spirals and based on the square as well. On the right-hand side, we have, petroglyphs. So you could see them in Ireland, Scotland, the UK, Europe have a lot of beautiful petroglyph art. We have it here in Australia as well. It's our most, I guess, primitive form of artwork to be carved into stone. And the most prominent symbols are always the circle and the spiral. And I really believe it's because we were inspired in nature, what we looked at in plants, and obviously looking up at the night sky as well. Bottom left-hand corner, we've got traditional Aboriginal art as well. The circles, the concentric circles, represent a campsite or a waterhole, so people gathering around a campsite. We are now in Papua New Guinea, those gorgeous little children there with the painted spirals on their face, absolutely stunning. And bottom right-hand corner is a traditional art form in Vanuatu called sand painting. And this is all done by freehand. And I'm just going to go to the chat and see what people are saying. So like I mentioned, this is a huge subject, and I know I'm missing out on a lot of other places in the world as well, but we will touch on more, obviously, throughout the course in May. We just can only squeeze in so much in a 3-hour workshop. So the triangle since ancient times has always represented fire. It is our most simple form, and it is a symbol of life. It is, as you saw, we are made up of triangles. Everything in life is made up of triangles. And I'm a big lover of mythology and what you can learn through mythology. So we're obviously in Egypt, we've got the pyramids there. And we have those simple structures. So the bottom is a square and we have the pyramids. So symbolically, the shape of the pyramid represents the ray of the sun. In Egyptian mythology, the god Ra sat atop a pyramid-shaped mound of earth that rose from the primordial sea. Now, these are stories come out of 3200 BC. We also have the mandala, my first love and what introduced me to the world of sacred geometry. So mandala, it's a holistic concept integrating the human body with itself, with the community, and with the environment. So this is a 6th century tradition. Now, the Tibetan sand mandalas on the left-hand side, these are created out of little particles of sand, and these are destroyed at the end. So swept into the center as a symbol of impermanence and letting go and non-attachment to life. And I will talk about this more, obviously, in the course. On the right-hand side, a lot of people don't know about this particular monument, which exists in Indonesia, in Borobudur. And this is Borobudur. So it's the largest mandala on the planet. And it is one large mandala that monks will pilgrim to every year. And it's absolutely stunning. Some of you have taken that class with me before. We have also the yantra. So during the course, I will touch on the mandala and the yantra and how it's used as a contemplative and meditative approach. So my teachings are taking elements of traditions, but modernizing. So inviting the tool of what I used from the age of 7, which is the tool of purging. So using these yantras and mandalas as a tool for a contemplative sense and for psychological and spiritual health. So now we're in Native America in the South, the Navajo people, and this is a tradition called sand painting. It's a dynamic living sacred entity that enables a transformation in the mental and physical state of aligning the individual. And these are all based on the winds as well. So you've got earth, air, water, fire in the cardinal directions. And I find this so fascinating because, you know, you've got the traditional Tibetan mandala, and they destroy this at the end as a symbol of impermanence. And in this tradition, the Navajo people, you know, after the healing ceremony, the sun painting is considered toxic and is destroyed because it has absorbed all the illness of problems. Very fascinating. Labyrinths. So now we're at Chartres Cathedral in France. So labyrinths were used as for prayer and meditation and can be found all around the globe. It's a 12th century tradition emerging from the Christians, and it's used as they walk to help with reflection and spiritual healing. One of my favorites. Don't know if anyone's been there before. Let me know in the chat. So staying in the architecture, we have rose windows. So this is Westminster Abbey. And I don't know if Amanda's in the class tonight or this evening, morning, wherever you are in the world, but this is one of her beautiful works. So I studied a few patterns in Westminster Abbey, and the rose window was one of them. And that is her beautiful rendering of the class. Absolutely stunning. So within the course in May, we will be exploring all of these patterns around the world. So we'll explore 4-, 5-, and 6-fold symmetry. I'll take you for a trip around the world, but I will also talk students through the methods of drawing simple tessellations and also learning how to analyze and deconstruct a pattern. Haven't really decided on what one to analyze with you yet. It's conjuring. But yeah, I'll take you back to the principles. But before we even get onto that, that's something that will happen at the end of the course. First, you need to understand the fundamentals. You need to understand how to divide a circle up into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, I'm not going to do odd numbers in the introduction course. We're just going to stick to 4, 8, 3, 6, and 5. 5 and 10. All right, let's look at some floor mosaics that look quite similar and, funnily enough, become more complex as we evolve as humans. So let's look at 1st century ancient Rome. That's the head of Medusa in the center there. Then we've moved to the 7th century. We have the Temple of Apollo in Crete and the beautiful Hisham's Palace in Palestine. And hopefully it's still there. This is 8th century. So you can see how we have progressed as humans and how we have created more complex patterns as we have evolved. And also, I'd like to point out that obviously we've been inspired by each other as well. So we're now in the south of India. This is a 5,000-year-old tradition, only performed by females in the front of their homes every morning. It's called kolam, K-O-L-A-M, or sometimes known as Rangoli. And it is all freehand using ground up rice powder. And I absolutely adore these mandalas. And what's so interesting is mathematicians have traveled to this particular area, Tamil Nadu, quite near Pondicherry, to try to understand how these women are creating such complex fractal patterns within their work with no mathematical education system. So there's a whole field of study called, well, it's quite a new word. It was a new word for me when I entered into this beautiful book called Feeding 1,000 Souls. And I'll repeat that. It's called Feeding 1,000 Souls. It's one of my favorite books. And in the chapter there's a chapter called Ethno-Mathematics. And it's the study of how mathematics is embedded into each and every one of us. And this math just pours out of us naturally. I mentioned this before, the koru, the Maori word for loop, is a spiral shape based on the unfailing silver fern found of the ponga plant, symbolizing new life, growth, and strength. So we are now in Papua New Guinea. This is a head ornament called the cap. Only the males wear, the male leaders wear these cups. And through my research, I have found something quite interesting, which is the square or the 8-pointed star, 4s and 8s, and the square has always been used as a symbol of power. So it's a power structure, it's a symbol of stability and grounding, which I find extremely interesting. When we look into textiles across the world, you see patterns as well, embroidery, most of which is based on the square. This is the beautiful Hmong artisans in Vietnam. Absolutely stunning artwork. Weaving as well. Weaving takes on the form of a circular manner. Close-up of that house in the Toraja tribe, circles, spirals, and squares. Okay, we're in India at the Red Fort, and we're now in the beautiful world of the traditional arts and crafts of the Islamic lands. So we have this beautiful rosette patterning upon the ceiling. Morocco, lots of rosettes. In Morocco, we have zouak, so painting on wood. We have Moroccan zilig tiling, which follows the rules of patterns, obviously, as you can see there. Absolutely stunning. Don't know if you've been to Morocco before, but oh my gosh, the patterns, amazing. So we have now, as humans, really taken geometry to the next level. We're in Uzbekistan now, and this is Tale Khori. It's translated to decorated with gold, and it's a square-shaped building of the madrasa. Absolutely stunning, beautiful. So if I was to analyze that beautiful ceiling, I would have to break it down into its simplicity first. So I work backwards, which is super fun. So let's go back to simplicity. I'm looking at a rose window in England at the Cullis Cathedral. Now this, we could call the seed of life or the creation diagram, 6 circles emanating from the center circle. So 6 around 1, 7. On the left-hand side, we have something very similar. So this is an X-ray diffraction of a beryllium crystal. Crystals, particularly quartz crystals, form in 6s. 6 is considered the number of perfection in Neoplatonic philosophy. I'm going to show you the magic of 6 throughout the course in May, and I'm also going to show you the magic of 6 tonight when we draw the dodecahedron. 6 is quite phenomenal. It's our strongest number, and I'll come back to 6 in a second. Because we're now talking about minerals, let's look at the sodium atom. So the sodium atoms are arranged in octahedrons, as are chloride atoms. So think about salt. It is only when they come together that they make salt's cube shape. So octahedrons and the cube have dual nature. They are the same. Let's go back to the human, our DNA, our body. What are we made up mostly of? Water. So let's have a look at the water molecule. This is a view of Saturn. I don't know if you know, but Saturn has a northern pole that is shaped like a hexagon. So it's a cloud band circling Saturn's north pole. And it's believed that Saturn has a lot of water. So the water molecule, if you didn't know, is hexagonal. So the disposal structure of water molecule produces a hydrogen bond between water molecules, which cluster together in a hexagonal 6-sided pattern. So this is what we believe is to be happening on Saturn. There must be water for this vortex, hexagonal vortex to be happening. So let's look at 6. So it's the seed of life expanded creates the flower of life, which I'm sure most of you have come across before. On the left-hand side, we have Leonardo da Vinci's drawings. He has theorized upon these for quite some time. Now, let's look at the human journey, or the Kabbalah, the tree of life in esoteric Judaism. The tree of life can actually be found within the flower of life, which is actually quite beautiful, I find. So again, touching on a lot of subjects, this is a portal into itself. We could spend a year a lifetime studying the Kabbalah, obviously. Keeping on the number 6, the number of perfection, snowflakes. Snowflakes, water. Every snowflake, not every snowflake actually, we only photograph, funnily enough, the most perfect representations. So some snowflakes are just absolute blobs, but sometimes we can find them within this hexagonal structure. So on the left-hand side, we have what's called stellar plates. You can see they're more hexagonal in form. And on the right-hand side, we have dendrites. You can see they're more complex. Now, on the left-hand side, we have stellar plates, which happen in a colder climate. So they don't have as long to live through the atmosphere, so they freeze quicker. The dendrites happen when the climate is warmer, there's more humidity. So the snowflake has a lot more time to flow through the atmosphere and crystallize and break down into this beautiful fern-like structure. And every single element of the snowflake is made up of imperfect triangles. Honeybees build in this way, the most sturdy structure there is, repeated hexagons. Sorry, I'm also reading the chat box at the same time. I don't know if I should be doing that, but I'm interested in what you have to say as well. Sorry if I've got pronunciations wrong. I love it though. There's always something to, there's always something. I get excited and carried away as well. So at the top right-hand side there, we've got the basalts. Basalts in Ireland, but we also have basalts all across the world as well. So if you can go down to Fingal Head here in Australia. Some of you might not know where that is, Tasmania. So these rock formations cool and contract, and they form in these imperfect, irregular, hexagonal, and pentagonal formations, which is very similar, if not correlates to coral, coral formations as well. So as I said, nature will always find a way to harmonize. Now, I'm actually going to ask you, so I want to see the chat box just fill up with guesses. Those of you who haven't taken my class before, can you guess what these are? And I'll give you a clue, which is we cannot see them. Take a guess, pop it in the chat box. I'd love to see your opinions. So I've given you a guess. We can't see them. I'll give you another guess. We need them to be able to breathe. If these didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to breathe. No one's got it yet? Woohoo, Mary. Phytoplankton. These are diatoms. D-I-A, I'll pop it in the chat box. Diatoms, they're single cell organisms that live in the ocean, phytoplankton made up of silica, and they help us breathe. There are so many of them. We are still finding different species. We actually brush our teeth with them. If you go and walk along the beach, sometimes you'll see the ocean is foamy and you've got all these little foam balls along the ocean. That's diatoms. They are essential to our life and they are absolutely gorgeous. They are like little rose windows underneath a microscope, absolutely stunning. And they're all the shapes that we're exploring today and throughout the course. Now, I've been showing you polygons, regular polygons, irregular polygons, but everything spirals, everything's circulating, spiraling. And you can see that in snail shells, just shells in general, phyllotaxy movement, plants spiral towards the light, towards the sun, and we spiral as well. The blood flow in our body, everything's spiraling, constantly dynamic. So we've now moved on to fives and tens, so the pentagon. Pentagon is the symbol of the life. universe. It's the most common number found in nature. I don't know if you've ever looked at a line before. I'm hoping that your whole kitchen experience will just become so much more fun. The next time you take a cross section, so you cut a vegetable in half, just have a look, take a moment and look at the patterns that are within the leek or a broccoli, cauliflower, anything. It's just so unbelievably beautiful. And I don't know if you've looked at a lime. Limes will always have a little 5 at the top, looks like a turtle. Pentagons appear everywhere in your foods. Blueberries, always a 5. Tomatoes, apples, I could name a whole list. At the top in the middle there, we have a cross section of a plant cell. So plant stem, sorry. So we have 5 in the center. On the left-hand side, we have the sand dollar. And on the far right-hand side, we have the passion fruit flower, which is one of my favorite flowers. So we have, if you look closely at that passion fruit flower, we have 3, 5, and 10, which, if you didn't know, are Fibonacci numbers. Okay, so 5 pops up in nature time and time again. I would say drawing used to be my most favorite activity. And now I would say my most crucial activity, and up there in my most favorite, would be to take a walk in a park. So to go through a national park, just be in nature, walk along a coastline, be next to water. I think I wouldn't be here doing what I do today if I didn't have nature surrounding me. It's one of my biggest inspirations. So the pine cone. Something quite phenomenal about the pine cone. We have 13 spirals to the right and 8 to the left. These are Fibonacci numbers. We have bubble net feeding on the top right-hand side. Whales feed in this manner, in this spiral motion. The way that they spiral up towards the top of the ocean pushes their prey towards the center, and they'll push the prey towards the center, push them up to the top of the surface, and that is how they eat, in a spiral manner. The bottom left-hand corner, we've got a cross-section of cabbage. You can see 5 there quite prominently. We've got the Milky Way, and the bottom right-hand corner, we have the beautiful native plant of Australia called the Banksia flower, which is part of the Protea species. And I have analyzed the Banksia flower quite in depth, and there are always 13 or 21 spirals, which are Fibonacci numbers. Now, within the course, this is a huge subject, I find. The Fibonacci numbers and the golden spiral, we need so much time to talk about and understand and fully understand what this is. It's used in architecture around the world. It's used in paintings, the way we photograph, and we resonate with this particular proportion because it lives within our body, our DNA. And it is really the basis of life. So students in the course will learn how to incorporate this golden aesthetic in art, photographic and interior compositions. So we'll draw the golden spiral and use a variety of methods using the rectangle, the triangle, the diminishing pentagon, and we'll also build as well. I find building helps us change the perspective and understand more deeper elements of what this golden spiral is. So building a 3-dimensional golden frame. It also exists in the way that plants grow up to the sunlight. Sometimes they grow in this Fibonacci manner as well. And at the bottom right-hand corner there, we have what's called the tuba shell. It's an X-ray of a tuba shell, which is reminiscent of this golden ratio. Not everything is golden though. We have many different types of spirals in nature as well. So again, a little bit of a tease. So I'm going to come back down to the platonic solids. So these were theorized upon by Plato. And he really believed that these three-dimensional figures and their different combinations reveal every possible geometric law, forming the physical reality we are experiencing. So today we are going to draw the dodecahedron in what I think is a really beautiful manner. And the way I'm going to teach it is I'm going to show you how the triangle and other shapes evolve quite quickly out of dividing a circle into 6. I don't know if you've ever seen what pollen looks like, but it comes in all of these beautiful platonic solids. So we have the greatest stitchwort pollen in this beautiful dodecahedron, winter's bark, tetrahedron, goat's beard. You can see the 6 and the 3 in there. And coming back to the dodecahedron, which has been theorized upon by Kepler. If you haven't heard of Kepler's work, Joseph Kepler, please write his name down, Kepler. Musica of the Spheres is one of his most favorite work, which is about the planetary movements. On the left-hand side, we have a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci. And going back to phytoplankton, this is a coastal coccolithophore. It is over 100 million years old, and obviously humans have found the most perfect one, which is a dodecahedron, which is quite phenomenal. So this is a phytoplankton algae with fivefold symmetry called pentaliths. So that is what we are going to draw today. So I could have extended that presentation quite far into the distance, but I think I'll leave it there for you. If you have any questions or you feel inspired, you're welcome to talk to me now or put some questions in the chat box. Or if you have anything to offer as well, I feel like everyone has something to offer. You're welcome to put in the chat as well. So I'm going to give everyone 10 minutes. So if you do have any questions, pop it in the chat box through that 10 minutes. If you don't have any questions or don't want to do it publicly, you can email me and message me anytime. Take this time to grab a cup of tea, go to the toilet, grab a cup of coffee, and we're going to come back and start drawing straight away. So you'll need A3 paper, you'll need a sharp pencil, a compass, and a ruler. Okay, so hopefully your mind is expanded and you're inspired and you're ready to draw. Okay, again, those of you who have taken so many classes with me before, I'm a big lover of expression and I love emojis. So I would like you to choose an emoji that expresses yourself right now in the moment, which is going to be used for the chat box. So when I'm teaching this pattern, I'll say, are you ready to move on to the next step? And you'll put your little emoji in the chat box because I can't visually see you giving me a thumbs up and saying yes. I think it's a great way to communicate. So let's test that out now. Put it in the chat box. I was reading your messages coming through. If you are interested in the May course and you haven't received an information pack, please email me and I will send one through to you ASAP, okay? Just please contact me, not through the chat box because I won't remember who to send an email to. Just contact me by email. That would be great. So keep your chat box open. I am going to work, I originally drew this drawing portrait, so you're welcome to draw a portrait. Today, just because of aesthetics and the way that my camera is set up, I'm going to draw it landscape. So it's completely up to you. So you're going to need a rubber, a compass, a second compass, if you have one. If you don't, completely fine. I like to work with 2 compasses. You'll know why. And a selection of pencils. So 1 pencil is absolutely fine, but if you get a little bit serious, it's nice to work with H pencils and B pencils. So your H pencils, if you didn't know, are your hard pencils, which are lighter. They're perfect for geometry. Your B pencils are great for freehand work. They're smoother, they're darker. But obviously we're not computers, so we can't delete any layers. So something to keep in mind is being very light with your touch. You'll know straight away if you're a heavy-handed person. If you are, just try to be a little bit lighter with your touch. Breathe through the expansion and contraction of the compass. Take your time. Patience is your friend. If you are not a patient person, geometry is not your friend at all. So maybe it can teach you a little bit of patience, a little bit of discipline as well, teaching us to slow down and breathe. Accuracy is quite crucial for patterns. So again, taking your time, not rushing, because we're working in layers, and our foundation, our first layer, is our most crucial layer to then come to the next and the next and the next. And if you're inaccurate with each layer, the pattern just expands and runs away from you. So that's just something to keep in mind. This particular drawing is not so complex, although we are working with 5, which means it's an odd number, which means it can never be 100% perfect. So there's always going to be a little bit of a discrepancy, but that's completely fine. And that's just a reminder that nature is imperfect, but perfect at the same time. Okay. So I am going to put this one aside. Please let me know in the chat box if you are working with A3, because if you are not working with A3 and you're working with A4, we need to change the radius. So please let me know which size paper you're working with. Okay, those of you who are working A2, actually, I'll put this in the chat box in a second because it looks like there's a bit of diversity. Looks like there's A4, A3, and A2. So the first thing that I need everyone to do is, 1, check your ruler. Is it dirty? If it is dirty, you need to wipe that ruler because you're going to create smudges all over your page, which can be quite frustrating, especially if you're a perfectionist, which I am to an extent. I really don't like smudgy paper. So it's nice to keep a tissue next to you, which I'm actually going to go get. So just a little napkin. Make sure your pencil is sharp. Now, good to have a big rubber and also good to have a small rubber. So if you're not familiar with what this rubber is, it's called a mono zero eraser, and it's like a little pen. They're tiny, great for rubbing out small lines. I'll pop that in the chat box. Okay, we're going to begin drawing. I have my A3 piece of paper. I consider this space. So I don't consider the page as emptiness. I just call it space. And what I need to do is start from somewhere. I need to draw a horizontal line, so her horizon, right in the middle of the page. So you need to measure half of your page and draw a horizontal line right through the center. Sandra, your paper size is fine. 11 by 14 is fine. I'm just going to adjust my camera so it's aesthetically in the middle. Let me know in the chat box when you have your line on your page. But remember what I said? If you are heavy-handed, you will know by now. Look at your horizontal line. It shouldn't be as dark as mine. Mine is dark so you can see it. It should be very light. Okay, so those of you who are working with size A3, your radius is going to be 10 centimeters. So I'm going to measure 10 centimeters out from the center and make a mark. Now, if you're working A4, I'm pretty positive that 10 centimeters will fit on your page. Please let me know. I don't have A4 in front of me right now. But I feel like if you're working A4, dropping it down to 8 centimeters will be nice. And if you're working A2, I'll leave it up to you. You could probably expand it out to 12 or 14 centimeters, completely up to you. But if you're working A3, 10 centimeter radius. If anyone needs me to repeat anything at any point, please don't hesitate to talk to me in the chat. So you're going to place your compass still point in the middle. Change the radius of your compass to 10 centimeters or whatever your radius is. And you're going to commit to your first circle right in the center of the page. So right now you should have a circle overlapping a horizontal line. When you have that, let me know in the chat box. Now, a little breathing practice that I like to keep in mind is when I'm placing my compass on the paper, I inhale and I exhale through the movement of the circle. So simple, but really effective. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my camera. Okay, so what you have now is, well, welcome to geometry. Everything starts this way. So we have a circle overlapping a line, creating new points at east and west. So what we're going to do now is keeping the radius the same. Something to keep in mind is sometimes these compasses, especially the modern ones, because they're not made like they used to, they can tend to move. So just check that it's still on your original radius. I'm going to move my compass to both east and west and just look at my hand movement first before you do anything yourself. I'm going to swing and mark on the circle, top and bottom, and then repeat on the opposite side. Swing and mark, swing and mark. So do that for me now.
Could you repeat that again, please?
No worries. So keeping the radius the same, I take my compass to both east and west. I swing on the circle, so swing up, swing down and make a mark. Repeat on the opposite side, swing and mark, swing and mark. Let me know in the chat when you have completed that step. Now, I don't want you to draw this in, but what I want to show you is the magic of 6. So if I took my ruler and joined. Each point I am able to achieve a hexagon. So that is a very, very simple way to achieve a hexagon. So I'm just going to get rid of that now. You can also draw a triangle and another one facing the opposite side to make a 6-pointed star. Very, very, very simple. What we're going to do is take our ruler line it up top to bottom. And instead of drawing a vertical line, I'd like you to just make a little mark along the horizon. So a little center point here. And then you're going to place your compass on that point that you just created, because every step is essential for the next step. You're going to shrink your compass until it hits the center. So this will be half the radius you began with. Before you commit to the circle, swing it round to the opposite side. Check that it's tangent, which means it's just touching. And you're going to draw a full circle very lightly inside the circle, the large circle, like so. And let me know when you've completed that step. So this should be just touching, not overlapping, not gapping. Great. So keeping that radius the same, I'd like you to take your compass to the center of the page and swing and mark along that horizontal line. So I just want to point out that this radius that you have currently from the center to this point is 1/4 of the diameter of the circle. So if I move that across, it should touch the opposite side and so forth on the other side. So you've divided the circle up into 4 harmonious parts. So when you put your compass point on the left-hand side, where mine is, you can now draw a second circle that is touching the center and not overlapping, just touching the west-hand side. So it'll look like 2 eyes, starting to look a little bit like a Cartman character. But if you look closely, you have just created the yin-yang symbol. So if you follow my finger, we have 2 tadpoles chasing each other. Let me know when you have completed those steps. Wonderful. So I'm going to zoom out just slightly. At the moment, I have my horizon. So I have my horizontal line crossing through the circle at west and east. I need to create my, well, I need to complete my cardinal directions. I need my north and south points. So what I'm going to do is create a bisect. Sorry, I need to invest in a new arm. It's a little bit slidey. Guys. Okay. So I need to bisect. So this is called creating a bisect. Before I start drawing, I'll explain. So I need to create a vertical line through the middle. So I use my compass to do that, and I'm going to swing and mark from these intersections at the top to make a cross. So X marks the spot and at south as well. So if you're working landscape, what you can do is you'll notice there's not much space here and not much space at the bottom. So if your compass is at 10 centimeters, this is not going to work. So this is quite arbitrary. I find one of the most, funnily enough, hardest things to teach, because you have to use your mind's eye, so your intuition. So what I'm looking for, and I'll just demonstrate. So I'm going to swing and mark from the opposite side to make a cross. And that's my north point. So what I'm looking for, if you have to shrink your compass down, is I know it needs to be past the center point. So it needs to be a little bit larger. Okay, so I swing and mark, but the trick is you need to keep the radius the same. Swing and mark to make a cross. I'm going to repeat that south. So I've got my south cross. So now I have my north and south marks, which means I can take my ruler and join north to south, which will pass through the center of my page. Okay, some of you are asking for me to show you that again. So these two intersections up here, that's the points I'm working with. So I take my compass point, swing and mark, and it makes a cross, which is my north point. Repeat at the bottom. So to give you an idea, if you're confused and the compass will need to be larger than 5. So it needs to be larger than half the radius. So make it about 6, and then you'll get that cross, or else it won't work. It needs to be larger than half the circle for it to work. I'll give everyone a little bit more time. Okay, we're going to move on. Now, remember I said we're not computers. We can't just delete layers. So what I'd like you to do now is the cross at the top at north and the cross at the south, we don't need them anymore. So I'd like you to rub them out. And this is a reason why we don't want to be too heavy-handed. So let's rub them out so it doesn't confuse us. And then I'd like you to just with your pencil, mark your north point. So you can call that north and your south point. So make a tiny little dot at north and a tiny little dot at south. So I've noticed in the chat box, there's been quite a lot of questions about materials, resources, books. If you go onto my website, there's actually on the homepage, you can look at a resources page, and I have a list on my website of books, recommended books, and also materials as well. I'll be sending out an email with a recording of this workshop, so I'll put that link in the email as well, so it can direct you to that area on my website. Okay, so I am now going to place my compass point on north. Make sure that the compass point is directly on the north line where it crosses the circle. Now, I'm going to work on the left-hand side. See this curve that the left-hand circle is making at the top? You're going to need to adjust your compass so that you create a semicircle that will just touch, not overlap these two circles. So tangent means just touching. Those of you who are joining the May course, I'm going to put a list together of terminology that you can use in the future for yourself, or if you do feel like teaching anyone in the future. There's a couple of terminologies that are quite important. Tangent means just touching. We use it in conversation. You know how sometimes we have a conversation, we go off on a tangent. It means that it's still derived from the same source, but we've touched and moved on to the next journey, the next step. So we're going to also repeat this at south. It will start to look like a sad face. And let me know in the chat when you've completed those steps. Now, as soon as you have created those two semicircles, top and south, what I'd like you to do now is rub out the inner markings, which was a previous step that we don't need anymore. Very important to rub them out so we don't get confused as we move forth. I'm just going to wait for a few people to say that they're ready to move on to the next step. Maybe got about 10 people and there's 85 in the class. Great, thank you. So now I'd like you to mark just lightly with your pencil these 4 points. And keeping your radius the same, you're going to take your compass. I'm going to work on the top left. I'm going to swing down on the circle and mark. As soon as you create that mark, I'd like you to make a little dot with your pencil. Then you're going to take your compass, point. So this is called taking your compass for a walk. Swing and mark again. If anyone needs me to repeat that, please let me know. Okay, great. Thanks, Ingrid. I'll repeat that again. So I'm going to go back to north. Your compass should be on this radius when you created your semicircle. So this one here. So what you're going to do now is I'm going to go anti-clockwise, so to the left here. I swing and mark. So swing down, mark on the circle, create a dot, take my compass to that point, and swing and mark again. And then make a dot. So there's a lot of repetition in geometry. So we're going to repeat that and mirror on the opposite side. So we're going to reflect, swing and mark, make a point, swing and mark. It's like leaving an imprint on your journey through life. And if you mark the north and south points, you have now created 10 points around your circle. Magic. Okay, so once you have your 10 markings, guess what? Again, we're not computers, so we can't delete any layers. But this bottom layer, we don't need anymore. We can keep the north and horizontal lines, the vertical and horizontal lines, but ever so lightly. But we don't need all of this anymore. It's just going to get in the way. So we can just slightly rub that out. It's okay if you can see a little bit of a remnants of pencil work, which is actually quite nice, to be honest. I love seeing all the layers. And if your horizontal and vertical lines are really thick, just rub them out slightly. We still need them, but just ever so lightly. So whilst you're rubbing, I'm just going to take a quick toilet break. So let's just all have a 5-minute break. If you need to stretch your back, go to the toilet, grab yourself a cup of water, please do so now. I just like to keep a little bit of space between steps and just make sure everyone is up to the same stage. So just 5 minutes maximum. Take a breather. And I'll see you soon for the next steps. Alrighty. So we have our 10 points. And what I'd like you to do for me, please, is starting from north, I would like you to call north 10. And then we're going to work in a clockwise motion. And we're going to go 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at south, and keep going 6, 7, 8, 9. And let me know when you have completed those steps. Awesome. I can see who the keen beans are. Those who are interested in, maybe some of you are beginners here today, maybe some of you are hobbyists and just love to draw patterns, maybe some of you really want to teach patterns. And I must say, I know some of you have taken classes with me before and you know how to divide a circle up into 5 and 10. But what's so important before you even think about passing on this knowledge is it needs to live in your body. I mean, we have the knowledge in our body, but to draw these, it's a discipline to draw these rituals every day and really understand without thought how to divide a circle up into particular numbers is super crucial, so crucial before even thinking about creating any sort of complex pattern. Very important. So we have 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to wait for a few more people. Again, I feel like it's the same 20 or so people that keep saying they're ready to move on to the next step. No man gets left behind. Tell me that you are ready to move on to the next step. Thanks so much. Also, just to be honest, my camera head is broken. So if my camera drops occasionally, it is because a piece of plastic has broken this evening. So I do apologize. Just going to get some tape. So I'm just reading the chat box and Karen, you just asked, do you have a course to learn the basics? And that's exactly what my course in May is all about. So please email me and I'll send you an information pack. So we're going to move on and create a 10-pointed star. And what you're going to notice is everything is parallel. So I'm going to walk you through the journey itself. So 10 is going to pass through to 3. So I'd like you to join 10 to 3. And once you have your ruler on 10 to 3, you can actually slide it directly across to 8 and 5. Please make sure to take your time. And you will notice that those two lines are parallel. So you can draw these lines in a little bit darker than your previous. And if your pencil is starting to get a little bit blunt, please sharpen it now. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to achieve the same method. I'm going to create a line from 10 to 7. And that line from 10 to 7 should pass through and intersect the horizontal line, nice and neat on the west-hand side. And then you'll slide your ruler to number 2 and draw a line directly to south at 5. And if you're not familiar with this form, it is a quadrilateral, it is a rhombus or diamond, which if you divide it up, currently you will achieve 4 triangles. And if you feel like you're falling behind a little bit, just take your eye to where the line begins and where it ends. So just find its friend on the opposite side. The information's there on the page. Okay, now I'm going to take my ruler to 1 and it's going to join to number 8. And then I'm going to slide my ruler. Parallel, reflecting the opposite side, which is going to be 3 to 6. You'll notice everything is a reflection. And now let's go 9 to 2. And this is for the perfectionists out there. You can see if your line is crossing the vertical and your diagonal crossing 8 to 1. So these paths should meet perfectly. If they don't intersect perfectly, it's completely fine. You don't need to stress about it, but that's what we're looking for. So look for the parallel directly beneath the 9 to 2, which is 7 to 4. It's also nice to check in how hilarious we are, that we find so much satisfaction when all the lines meet up and they're perfectly aligned. I love your comment, Ali. It kills you when they don't. So again, it's also nice to check in with oneself as to why does it cause you so much distress when the lines don't meet. It's quite an interesting observation of the self. So we have 2 more lines to place within the circle to complete our 10-pointed star. We're going to join 9 to 6 and then slide our ruler over to 1 to 4. And we have a beautiful 10-pointed star, or what's called a dodecagram. So those of you who are not familiar with geometry terminology, you have a polygon. So a form with straight edges. And there are infinite polygons. They can be regular polygons or irregular. And the polygram is the star that sits inside the polygon. So if we have a dodecagon, we have a dodecagram. If we have a hexagon, we have a hexagram. If we have an octagon, we have an octagram. And notice we have a few shapes appearing here. So the shapes that make up a dodecagram is another dodecagon, smaller within the center. And then we have what's called kites rotating around on the outside, which if you sliced in half would be triangles. And then in between those kites, we have another triangle. So we don't have many steps to go. I'd like you to pick up your compass and place your compass point on number 2 and extend your compass to north at 10. Let me know when you have that radius. So we're going to create another 10-pointed star, but this time with the compass, not the ruler, and it's going to be curvilinear. So I'm going to swing my compass from 10, which will meet 4. So Bron, I'm just reading your message. If your compass only extends to 10, let me know in the chat if you have a pencil holder like I have. Because if you have a pencil holder, I'll show you a little trick of how to expand your radius. So let me know. Oh, that's a shame. So those of you who have a compass like myself, where you can attach a pencil, to make the compass radius longer, you can just bring your pencil down and it actually creates a larger radius. But if you have a compass that only has a lead, you won't be able to achieve that. So Bron, just sit and watch for a second. So those of you who have swung from 2, 10 to 4, I'd like you to complete the full circle. So take your compass for a walk, go to 3, keeping your radius the same, you're going to swing 5 to 1. Take your compass to 4, swing 6 to 2, and work your way around the circle. Please don't stress so much if it's not looking perfect. That's not the aim of the game. And let me know in the chat when you have what I have on my page. Now I'm going to go back to Bron. I hope you haven't logged off. Because you can still achieve the same result as everyone else. So this is for Bron and anyone else whose compass couldn't reach that distance. So a little trick, you'll need your ruler. Just look at where I'm marking right here. I'd like you to put your pencil where my hand is at this intersection, just underneath 1. Make a mark. And I'd like you to take your ruler and direct it towards the number 8. And then along the vertical line, I'd like you to make a dash. So you're marking along the vertical line. Not all of you, but it's good for all of you to watch this little shortcut and trick. So that mark I just created along the vertical line is the same measurement and proportion, if you look carefully, for those of you who have created your curvilinear 10-pointed star. There's a smaller star within the center that has naturally appeared. I've marked the apex, so the tip of that. So Bron, if you can mark that for me. And then once you have marked that point, you can take your compass to the center of your page, so the center of your diagram, extend it to that new mark and create a full circle. And those of you who have your curvilinear star, you can create that circle if you like as well. Okay, if everyone has a darker B pencil, so maybe a 3B, 4B, or 5B, please grab that now, or you can use a fine tip black pen. I'm going to grab a black pen. We're going to highlight our dodecahedron. Just reading the messages. Danny, what do you need to see again? And let me know before I move on, because I'm going to move on very soon. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks, darling. Before we draw anything, what I'd like you to mark with your pencil, so just slightly make little dots at north, skip 1, go to the next. So we're working with the inner circle here to create the vertices of a pentagon. And once you find those points, I'd like you to just join each of them. Okay, so we have a pentagon in the center. Let me know in the chat when you have created your first pentagon. Okay, nice work. We're going to add a couple more lines in here. I'd like you to follow me. And you'll see how quickly this appears within the center. So just responding to Sophia's message, yes, I would recommend drawing these lines in darker pencil, or you're welcome to use a fine tip black pen if you feel confident. Now to complete our dodecahedron, the lines already exist on the page. So these are what we are highlighting. Now a dodecahedron consists of 12 faces. We can currently only see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces on one side because we are drawing three-dimensional on a flat surface. Mhm. So the dodecahedron is one of the 5 platonic solids theorized upon by Plato in his beautiful work, the Timaeus. And there's a wonderful book that I highly recommend from the Wooden Book collection called Platonic and Archimedean Solids by Dowd Sutton. And I'm just going to read you a little excerpt from the book itself about the dodecahedron. So whilst you're drawing and cleaning up your lines, the beautiful dodecahedron has 12 regular pentagonal faces, 3 of which meet at every vertex. Its symmetry is icosahedral. Like the tetrahedron or pyramid and the cube, the dodecahedron was known to the early Pythagoreans and was commonly referred to as the sphere of 12 pentagons. Having detailed the other 4 solids and ascribed them to the elements, Plato's Timaeus says enigmatically, there remained a 5th construction which God used for embroidering the constellations of the whole heavens. A dodecahedron sitting on a horizontal surface has vertices lying in 4 horizontal planes which cut the dodecahedron into 3 parts. Surprisingly, the middle part is equal in volume to the others, so each is 1/3 of the total. Also, when set in the same sphere, the surface areas of the icosahedron and dodecahedron are in the same ratio as their volumes, and their inspheres are identical. Fool's gold or iron pyrite forms crystals much like the dodecahedron, but don't be fooled. Their pentagonal faces are not regular and their symmetry is tetrahedral, which brings us back to the original form, which is the triangle, which is a symbol of life and fire and all that exists. So some of you are asking what book I was reading from, which is Platonic and Archimedean Solids by Dowd Sutton. Doesn't teach you how to draw anything, but is wealth of knowledge in a small book. Highly, highly recommend. Now, let me know in the chat box, has anyone heard of Vedic mathematics? I've got 1 yes, 2 yeses. So if you're not familiar with Vedic mathematics, it's a system of Indian mathematics that was rediscovered from the Vedas. And it's based on 16 sutras or formulas and 13 sub-sutras or sub-formulas that can be used to solve problems in various branches of mathematics. So Vedic mathematics is a collection of methods or techniques that can help to solve numerical computations quickly and faster. It's very fascinating. I'd highly recommend you to look up Vedic mathematics. I'll write it in the chat box right now. So for example, we have created 10 points around a circle currently. So we've got a 10-pointed circle. So there is a sutra called Purana Bayam. And it literally translates to by completion or non-completion, shows the ability of wholeness. So I'm going to show you in form around the circle what that means. So for example, we have 10 points around a circle. We've got a 10-pointed star, a pentagon, a dodecahedron. Now, if we look at it, every element separately, so if we're looking at the numbers, we have 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's do this together. You don't have to draw on your piece of paper, but I will. So we've got north at 10. So if you didn't already know, we have the numbers 0 through to 10. 0 through to 5 or 1 to 5 can make up every single number in existence. So we only need some basic forms and basic foundations, pretty much 1 to 5, and then we double. So if we're looking at these 10 points around the circle, if we go to 9 to 1, it equals 10. So we're looking for its friend on the opposite side. So 9 and 1 equals 10. 8, look for its friend on the opposite side, is 2, equals 10. 7, look for its friend on the opposite side, it's 3, that equals 10. 6 looks for its friend on the opposite side, 6 and 4 equals 10. So by completion or non-completion shows the ability of wholeness. Pretty fascinating, and that's the end of today's workshop.